Welcome in, everybody, to TexAgs Rewind, presented by Yeti. David Nuno here with Bob Loop from Brazos Valley MMA. He's hanging out because, A, I got hurt today there, but B, because you were quite impressed with my ability to reverse lunge yesterday, so I had to bring you on to talk about that.
I like that reverse lunge. That's about all I have to say about that one.
Yeah, it was the proper technique. So today on the show, I know you were watching a little bit, we talked about the most iconic players in college football since the year 2000. That was a fun conversation. Some people had Tim Tebow high, some others didn't. I had him kind of high. Billy Liucci got us up to date with A&M recruiting. Ryan Brauninger did the same thing in the 10 o'clock hour. And Phil Steele, the legend. Well, he's a legend, right? He breaks down college football. He's very high on the Aggies. All that and more on the TexAgs Rewind. When I say iconic, it can mean whatever it means to you. It doesn't mean you had to win a championship because my number one doesn't have a championship. Okay? My number one is maroon goggles, is Johnny Manziel. Since the year 2000. And I'm proud to admit that he's my number one. My number two was Reggie Bush.
Okay.
My number three was VY.
Okay.
The rest of my list, I can go different ways. Joe Burrow, Cam Newton, Tim Tebow, RG3, Baker Mayfield,
no,
Deshaun Watson.
Okay. So
that's kind of where my list is. And I after the first three, I don't really have an order, but that's just kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, to me, maybe.
Who am I missing, by the way? Am I missing somebody?
I don't know. Those are a lot of
There's a lot of names. Yeah.
Maybe Ezekiel Elliott. They won that national championship because of him.
Yeah.
Remember they had a third string quarterback. Didn't matter. He just gave the ball to Elliott.
Zeke. Yep.
I think the number one guy, if you look at it completely objective, is Vince Young.
Okay.
And number two on my list would be probably Cam Newton.
Cam's too. Okay.
And
won a championship.
And number three, and did they win it? Like people talk about Tim Tebow, they won those championships because of their defense, and they always want to say he won two. He didn't. Chris Leak was the starting quarterback when they won in 2006, and they won because of their defense. Go look at the box score and see what happened to Heisman Trophy winning quarterback Troy Smith in that game. By the way, when they played Oklahoma with Tim Tebow, they scored 24 points. What won that game was that the highest scoring offense, one of the highest scoring offenses in the history of college football at Oklahoma, scored 14 points.
Right.
Joe Burrow.
Got to. The season that he had, yeah.
And then if you want to get away from quarterbacks, it's hard to because so much is put on the quarterbacks now. But
are you going Reggie there? You don't seem that impressed.
I mean, Reggie Bush was amazing, but I don't have a problem with saying it.
What at Phoenix City to College Station has a lot of people in Bright excited and should because
yes,
and it's got people all over the SEC. And the state of Texas triggered too, which it should as well. But what a lightning bolt of a commitment! I mean, this has been in the works for a while, But Cam Coleman, he didn't do any kind of like pre-build up to an announcement, and there wasn't. I like it that way. I mean, you talk about getting more bang, getting more bang out of a commitment. That's the way to do it, and I don't know. You think about Jimbo, Damian Craig, the work they did on this recruitment, and Damian deserves a ton of credit here to go into Alabama, get a 5-star receiver, a legit, bona fide 5-star receiver here with size, speed, through the roof to go catch a football. He body control, he fights you for it. Just an absolute, you look at him and you go, straight up playmaker. Same thing I would have said when they signed, Evan Stewart. And you saw what he did as a true freshman. I expect a very similar, instant impact from Coleman in Aggieland. He's that good. And to go in there and beat out pretty much everyone in the country, but really in particular, just the teams out of that footprint. And everybody in let's just call it the traditional powers of the SEC. He could have been at Alabama. He could have been at Auburn, who some people predicted he was going to. He could have been at Florida or LSU. But he chose College Station and Jimbo and the Aggies. And the reason why is I think a lot of it had to do with just how early the Aggies were in on him And again, it was just a tremendous recruitment. I think he and his family felt like Texas A&M was home, and that's just great recruiting.
Every opportunity that they've had to get kids on campus has been a net positive, whereas maybe a year ago, guys were leaving campus and you were like, well, this kid had a good day, but this kid didn't have a good day. There was kind of some inconsistencies in what we were hearing coming out of those recruiting visit weekends. In the last couple of months, it has been sensationally good, over the top, like a huge wave of momentum.
Well, let's talk about what momentum means to kids. So we feel the momentum. Obviously, the staff feels it, but then I think kids around the country see, oh, what's happening there again?
Yeah, I don't know that it's going to push any kid that wasn't already leaning A&M's way to A&M. I think momentum, for lack of a better term, preys upon the guys that are already really close to committing. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I think Anthony Smith was getting pretty close anyway to wanting to make a decision because he was tired of the recruiting process. And then the momentum just kind of helped nudge A&M the right direction.
Right.
I think Weston Davis very similar. So there's no, in recruiting, there's nothing that is just purely black and white. There's a lot of factors. Every recruitment is different. But I do think momentum plays a part with nabbing kids that are really close to making a decision and already feeling good about A&M. That's where the momentum plays in. You're not going to get a kid that's completely up in the air in his recruitment, has no idea of when he wants to shut it down, and just because A&M gets 10 commitments in 14 days or whatever, they're going to shut it down in favor of A&M. You've got to have more going for you than just that.
Yeah. But the fact that they're starting to get these guys all at the same time, and the ones that are close are starting to lean that way, I think what it does, at least when people talk about it, the narratives that are out there on social media and from writers, columnists everywhere, is they're either going to take that position of NIL is why A&M is doing it, or, hey, there's something brewing in College Station again.
Well, if you just throw the NIL argument out there, it's extremely misinformed and lazy.
Why are you high on Texas A&M this year?
Well, numerous reasons. First of all, when I was going over the team with Coach Fisher last year, it seemed like a lot of the positions, especially the offensive line, he would say, boy, are we going to be really good next year. They were an inexperienced team last year. In fact, they rated number 124 on my experience chart. And then they suffered some key injuries, like when Anaya Smith went out in week 3, I think, or week 4, that really hurt them as far as the receiving corps goes. Of course, they went through 3 different starting quarterbacks last year and numerous injuries throughout the year. Now, this year, much more experience. 10 starters back on offense, 10 on defense. They, of course, are loaded with talent. Jimbo's been doing a great job as far as the recruiting aspect goes. And then I'll be putting out a blog in a couple of days which shows how teams do when they make that sort of jump on the experience chart. And usually it's pretty good. Even in a bad year last year, when Texas A&M went just 5-7, an unthought of 5-7, they beat LSU, and they were at the 2-yard line of Alabama on the road with a chance to win the football game in a 4-point loss. So you add all that together, the talent they have. I thought last year I might even pick them to win the West. I backed off a little bit because of last year's 5-7, but I still think that's a distinct possibility, and I like the Aggies' chances on October the 7th.
Phil, I put a lot of the, I don't want to use the word blame, but a lot of the issues last year on a young offensive line that just did not come together. If that offensive line comes together, I feel that offense could be potent. And I believe you had conversations with Jimbo about what the potential of that offensive line.
Yeah, and, as mentioned last year when I talked to him, he felt they could be the best offensive line or one of the best offensive lines in college football. But he didn't say in 2022. He said next year. Well, it's next year, and they do have my number 10 rated offensive line overall. You look at a center like Bryce Foster, right guard Layden Robinson, and last year, remember, there were times where they had 5 true or redshirt freshmen start at least one game last year, so they were very young.
All right, closing out the show here. Bob, I'm going to ask you a question I ask everybody. What are we supposed to do after we watch a YouTube video? I think you said your 10-year-old loves content, right?
So I'm just learning this, right?
Okay.
But you have to like it.
Yes.
And then you...
Comment.
Don't you have to comment on it?
To, yeah.
And then is there something about sharing it or pushing it forward?
Yes, share.
Really
like, comment, subscribe. Luke, anything we missing?
Tell your friends about TexAgs.
Tell your friends.
Yes.
If you grapple with somebody at Brazos Valley MMA, tell them about it. By the way, sign up your kid for their camp next week and the week after. It'll be great. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you guys next time on TexAgs Rewind.